There's truth and there's untruth. But if you stick to the truth, even against the whole world, you're still not mad.
Because the truth is, Neo never escaped from the Matrix, and he realizes that towards the end of the third film. But hear me out, I'm going to provide plenty of evidence from the films as well as philosophically. I know that some other channels have talked about this, and as the series goes on, it becomes more and more apparent that Neo never escaped, he just broke into a different layer of the Matrix. The machines had designed the Matrix in order for humans to not escape, and not only do they not want them to escape, they don't even want them to know that they're inside of a Matrix. People are safe and happy and have time, they will sit around and they will think about their existence, which is exactly what they don't want you to do in the Matrix. You're always going to have a small population, like the rebels we see in the film, who want to break out and they want to find out what's outside of the Matrix. Know that there are humans that will try to break out. It's inevitable. And so they prepare for that. That's why they have agents that fight back against you. Why wouldn't they make a Matrix inside the Matrix? And that way people think that they broke out, they get to feel empowered by that, and then they go into the system of constantly fighting agents. And so a lot of their time is spent spinning their wheels instead of making real change.
Hello, it's August 2025. Now I've said, for example, how there's no changing the minds of anyone on any position on any topic. And I've also said, for example, how people don't care what the truth is, but rather what they want the truth to be. Now this video is going to be directed to those people who call themselves awake, truthers, or perhaps even freedom fighter types. Now, a lot of these people, they want to share what they've learned. And you see this a lot in posts and even in videos that they make. They're trying to share information, trying to get the truth out, because for them, from their perspective, it's all about the truth. Now I'm setting aside, for example, how there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation in the world. And a lot of this stuff is what's being shared. But let's just set that aside and go along with the tidbits that are accurate, that are true, for example. And I've said, for example, how there's no stopping those with, for example, generational commitment and the monopoly on violence. And they've been successful for many, many centuries with whatever it is that they want to do, whatever that may be. So sharing information, truth, as truthers and freedom types might call it, is of what value? And people will simply get into that rut of sharing negativity and inciting people to become angry, frustrated, perhaps even depressed. And this is what is wanted. This is why these things are allowed. And truthers and freedom types, these people who call themselves these things, and awake, are actually fueling the other flavor of Kool-Aid. But you really have to ask, if you're a truther, freedom type, one of these people who trying to get whatever perceived truth out, what is the goal? What is it that you want to really accomplish? Because it seems like a lot of the times when you see these types of posts and so forth, most of it is just virtue signaling. Oh, look at me, I know about this. Whether it be true or false, perceived as truth, it's virtue signaling. And people are still talking about the events that began in 2020 and trying to say, hey, look, you know, there's more information and everything else. You know, on all these things I've talked about in older videos. So this is kind of a little bit of a revisit. But how much, for example, truth do you need to know on any topic? Because once you have the foundation, it's like, okay, just an example. Oh, this is corrupt. You need 2 examples? Is that going to be enough? Maybe 10? Hundreds? Like, when is it enough? It almost seems like there's a part of this that these truther and freedom types are just venting. But there comes a point where they're preaching to the choir, their own kind, people who may already know these things or whatever, and everyone's just, virtue signaling and sharing whatever other perceived truths to support, say, for example, a post or a video. But again, what is the point of all this? Because let's just say there's 2 sides to this. Make it simple. Well, the other side that, from their perspective, are not awake, they don't care. Again, they only care what they want the truth to be. And there's no waking anyone else up. So who is this really for, and what is the goal? And I've talked about, for example, how a lot of these freedom fighter types and so forth, they're just complaining about government, police, and everything else. And I've even dedicated a video, or 2 maybe, about, okay, so you've taken it all down, then what? Expect life just to go on? And this also applies to with perceived truths and sharing and everything else. It's, then what? You get the truth out there, and even if you did, for the sake of argument, wake others up to these things, so what? How is it going to change anything? It really isn't. Now, perhaps it might, for some people, change their view on life, their own life, how they are, maybe find some sort of self-improvement or something, who knows. Dare I say, even some people might link it to some spiritual awakening. But the reality is, it's all virtue signaling and venting at best, because there's no conclusion. Once you get whatever message it is that you want out, and then what? Are the people, for example, from their perspective, who are imposing evil and tyranny and everything, are they just going to say, oh, we got found out, time to stop, and retreat or give up, or, hey, surrender? And that's not going to happen. And people throughout history have been doing the same type of thing long before the internet. For example, using pamphlets and little newsprints and stuff, and doing mailers and everything. People would subscribe to whatever they have to say, perhaps listening to radio shows. It's just a repeat. It's a cycle. People regurgitating the same types of things. Again, whether the information is accurate or not, that's not the point. But there's been many people throughout history that trying to wake people up, get information out. Decades ago. Nothing has changed. Things are moving forward as they are. And these truthers and freedom types can't see it, because this is the flavor of Kool-Aid that they've chosen. This ties in, for example, with this whole red pill, blue pill matrix stuff. And there's plenty of videos where people talk, for example, how the red pill and the blue pill kept people in the matrix. And breaking it down, for example, how the main character, Neo, took the red pill to wake up, and he woke up into this mechanical world with machines and everything else. People failed to see that that was still another part of the matrix, just a different flavor of Kool-Aid, or in this case, a different pill. Red pill, blue pill, it's still within the matrix. And you could even throw in, for example, the black pill, because the black pill is just another variant, another pill to take, another flavor of Kool-Aid. But people who, I'm just going to stop here for a second. Let's just say, for example, the red pill, you did wake up to reality, machines and chaos and whatever the movie was about. Then what? Is there going to be some sort of grand awakening or anything else? No, things will still continue as they are. You might have a small segment outside of that, which once you're outside of that, you're not part of the game. I'm trying to draw here the analogy between the movie The Matrix and reality with truther and freedom types and trying to share truth, and they're researching and stuff. And what makes it even harder today with this AI nonsense, which I don't use, you don't know what is real anymore. Even if you see a video or audio or documents, you don't know what's real anymore, because this AI, which is part of a plan, has skewed even reality. You can't believe what you see anymore. Perhaps, if at best, you may be able to believe, accept what you see and hear with your own eyes. But then we get into, for example, the studies made famous by Julia Shaw, implanting false memories. I really highlight this, because now your memories are skewed, and even perhaps your perceptions at a time of, say, an event is skewed because you have biases and everything else. And this kind of goes into a video that I did a while back with regards to so-called free will, which is something religions and belief systems really focus on. Oh, you have free will. Do you really? If you think about it, everyone's being manipulated. So just to tie this all together here, when it comes to truthers and freedom types, sharing information and researching and being keyboard warriors is what is really going on here, because they really offer no first-hand insight of anything. And perhaps that's why most people are drawn to these people who are just keyboard warriors, who have a little bit more ambition, who make posts and videos because they can relate to them. There's always that, well, you know, they were just like us, so create some doubt if need be. But when there's somebody who comes along with evidence, facts, provides the receipts, as some may say, with first-hand insight, experience, knowledge, people turn away from that because now it's too real. As long as there's a room to have doubt, there could be discussion, and in today's world everyone walks away, and I hate using this term, agree to disagree. It's just, that's a weak thing to say. What is the end game? What is the end result? What is the goal by sharing everything other than venting and virtue signaling? Because if you can't answer that question, then realize that you're in a delusion. Another flavor of Kool-Aid. Just things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
After 9 years, you know what I realized? Ignorance is bliss.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.